Assalamualaikum to my valued supervisor, Dr. Ivan Ghazali, as well as the panel of examiner T.S. Zulkarnain bin Marjum and Sir Muhammad Khadafi bin Ibrahim. I'm Nur Fatin Nabilah binti Farid, and I'll be presenting my thesis on the assessment of lean manufacturing practice for productivity improvement considering cultural influences. The following is what will be covered in more depth during my presentation, which is background, problem statement, research objective, literature review, methodology, and lastly, the preliminary result. Before I begin discussing my research topic, let me first introduce you to the concept of lean manufacturing. Lean manufacturing is a production process based on ideology of maximizing productivity while simultaneously minimizing waste within a manufacturing operation. Anything that doesn't bring value to the customer are willing to pay for, it is considered a waste in lean manufacturing practice. Now, let's move to the first part of my presentation, which is about background of the lean manufacturing practice. In 21st century, lean manufacturing has evolved to lean enterprise, meaning that lean principles and techniques can be successfully applied across an organization in all business process. This indicates that lean manufacturing is a cultural phenomenon, not just a collection of technologies when it's completely achieved. Lean is centered on preserving value with less work, with the ultimate goal of providing perfect value to the customer through a perfect value creation process that has a zero waste. Let's go on the following part, which is the problem statement. Here, we will talk about the problem that occurs that require more research. In industry, there must be a problem in management waste. The consideration of strategy to reduce waste is different to each other organization, even from the top management to the low-level management. Because of this difference, it is quite difficult to make the same decision to bring all of one thought together. That's why we need to evaluate based on cultural preference. The primary objective of the study is to analyze the factors of lean manufacturing practice as they can relate to the cultural preference of Malaysia. To be more precise, these are the objectives. The first objective is to identify the criteria of lean manufacturing practice in literature. The second one is to determine the significant relationship between cultural values and lean manufacturing practice for productivity in Malaysia. And the last one is to evaluate the relationship between cultural values and lean manufacturing practice for productivity in Malaysia based on cultural values. In this section of research, we will talk about the most important features in lean manufacturing practice for the purpose of improving productivity through the Malaysian cultural preference. The conceptual model research framework that was presented explains how each factor, starting from cultural values to the factors of lean manufacturing practice, connect with each other to provide a more in-depth knowledge of this study. There are 11 factors of lean manufacturing practice that will affect productivity improvement in this research. The first factor is production planning and control, which is the evaluation of production inputs, updating and revising non-value activities and waste. Next is process and equipment, the activities to safeguard resources in the operation, such as maintenance and waste reduction in process. Other than that, new product development will affect productivity improvement by standardization of value stream from design, production, product delivery, and consumption. Human resources are also the important factor of lean practice, wherein human capital is developed in order to achieve lean goals through the establishment of an appropriate working environment. Moreover, workforce management tends to be important in order to assess and satisfy features of workers as a prime asset to enhance and develop their inherent capacities. Next, concurrent engineering will use a systematic approach to integrate all the design tasks, production, and marketing are done in parallel by all individuals, groups, and departments. Other than that, the crucial factor of lean is supplier relationship. Supplier relationship method may have impact on a long-term profitability. Customer relationship also play a big role in the indication of client demands and subsequently the maintenance of customers' loyalty through the provision of superior product and service that stand out from the competition. Other than that, The environmental performance is a strong vehicle for decreasing the total environmental footprint of manufacturing and the commercial activities, while simultaneously generating an engine for sustained and constant environmental improvement as a result of the cumulative impact. Next is the financial performance is the contribution of lean manufacturing to the environmental can lead to financial returns by acquiring new customer, competitive differentiation, and reducing costs through the waste reduction. And the last but not least, the social performance also essential for managers to pay particular attention to how efficiently manage social performance and to be aware of the impacts of lean practice on social performance. Before I begin discussing more about my research topic, let me explain about culture that is the main influences toward this research. Culture is the fundamental structure of social relationship. More specifically, it is means by which civilization can organize its behavior with the context of its grouping. A culture is a set of everybody's behavior that have developed through the time in response to a specific concerns. There are 5 cultural values that will be discussed in more depth in this study. It is individualism, collectivism, high-low power distance, high-low uncertainty avoidance, masculinity, femininity, and long short-term orientation. Individualism is described as the state of being self-sufficient and having no regard about not belonging to a group, while collectivism is defined as the degrees to which humans in a society are absorbed into organization into a social rather than individual trait. Individualism and collectivism are often contrasted with one another. The phrase power distance refers to a degree to which less powerful members on an organization or institution are ready to accept or even anticipate an unequal distribution of power. This willingness may be measured in terms of the power distance. A person who is able to manage unpredictable, unstructured, and unclear circumstances often has personality characteristics known as uncertainty avoidance. Masculinity is seen as a social character level that is more focused on the values of achievement, variety, and getting things. Femininity is against a social, not an individual trait that has to do with how values are shared between men and women. This is another basic problem that every society has to deal with, and there are many ways to solve it. A culture with a long-term focus tends to be more concerned about the futures, as evident by behaviors such as saving and perseverance. In contrast, a culture with a short-term focus tends to be more focused on the condition of the recent past and the present, with less consideration given to the future. The culture was classified differently for each country, including Malaysia. As we can see in the bar chart display, the index that was determined for Malaysian cultures. Malaysia was identified as a collective society. The power distance in Malaysia is exceptionally great. For masculinity, there was no classification can be declared for this dimension since masculinity and femininity have an equal index value. For an uncertainty avoidance and long-term orientation, Malaysia has equally low index. Uncertainty avoidance scored a slightly lower index value than a long-term orientation. On the basis of this explanation about cultural dimension, it is possible to reflect that each dimension has a unique set of characteristics. It is possible for the culture of one region civilization to be rather than similar from that of another. In order to determine the cultural value impacts that are relevant to the aspect of lean manufacturing practice, 5 hypotheses have been developed. In terms of collectivism, individualism, collectivism has a significant influence toward the productivity improvement on factor of lean manufacturing practice. For masculinity, femininity, masculinity has a significant influence toward the productivity improvement on factor of lean manufacturing practice. For uncertainty avoidance, higher uncertainty avoidance has a significant influence toward the productivity improvement on factor of lean manufacturing practice. For power distance, lower power distance has a significant influence toward the productivity improvement on factor of lean manufacturing practice. And lastly, for long-term orientation has a significant influence toward the productivity improvement on factor of lean manufacturing practice. The 5 hypotheses need to validate by the result of this investigation. This methodology will discuss more about research goal, research method, research flow, and data analysis that were used in the study to gain a preliminary data. To achieve the research goal, there's a step to obtain it. The first step is by using a research method. That is a way to describe the process of data collecting, processing, and the interpretation of this data by using quantitative research, qualitative research, and combined quantitative and qualitative research. The second step is by using statistical method, which is to determine if there is a substantive link between the effect of cultural values and lean manufacturing practice for productivity in Malaysia by using exploratory factor analysis (EFA) and confirmatory factor analysis (CFA). There are two categorizations of method which are quantitative and qualitative. Quantitative describe a way researchers test the theory and hypothesis, build fact, predict behavior, and explain an event statistically. Data can be collected by using questionnaire, structure, observation, and interview, while qualitative is described as a way of researchers look for a broad pattern, generalization, or theories from dense of categories. Use non-structured observation, interview, and documentaries. For the purpose of my thesis research, I use quantitative methodology to generate results. The following diagram illustrates my research plan flow. A flowchart illustrating how the several research activities for my thesis were compiled are featured. The research instrument for this study is online survey. For data collection, questionnaire is implemented by using Google Form. For data analysis, the Smart PLS were being used to show the calculation and explanation of the result. Smart PLS were used for data analysis to get a correlation between main aspects of lean manufacturing and cultural influences. The data collected in Microsoft Excel need to be inserted in Smart PLS software to get the descriptive result and a structural equation modeling. The result from Smart PLS will be used to rank the criteria based on an important rating. Last but not least, for the preliminary result, this is just an initial data that have been generated by using Smart PLS. The outcome for this world study project led to development of a measuring model which is resulted in major features being ranked according to their respective cultural values. This result is helpful for referencing in the features. This is simulation data developed by using Smart PLS measurement model. Since this is a preliminary result, the data obtained was not real and sufficient to achieve the world result, and the real data will be conducted in PSM 2. From the research finding, it has been ranked that the most important aspect for cultural values is a long-term orientation, uncertainty avoidance, and collectivism. And the factors of lean manufacturing practice has been ranked that workforce management is the most important, followed by production planning and control and customer relationship. It can be proved that the aspect from cultural values of long-term orientation will affect the workforce management in lean manufacturing for productivity improvement. This result may be different if it has not been ranked with the consideration of cultural influences. That's all for me. Thank you for listening.